Hello and welcome to the Plugged In Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Saturnis. In this episode, I'm speaking with Blake Callaway and Jeremy Cost from Astral Putters. We're going to talk about the putter they've designed, the putter company they've launched, which is one of the most adjustable putters you're ever going to find. Before we get into the interview, I'll go ahead and show you a little bit here. The review went up last week, but for the YouTube audience, you can see this is the Astral Blade. Really kind of simple looking answer style blade. But what makes it unique is that it comes with three different hosels, all with different kind of amounts of bend to them, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. And each of them has 20 settings, 10 on each side of the hosel. The hosel is reversible. So you have 60 settings on this putter where you can change lie angle, you can change the offset, you can change the toe hang. So you can fill in all of these interesting gaps between the offerings that are commonly out there. We see lots of putters that are plumber's neck answers. So you've got a full shaft of offset and 45 degrees of toe hang. Well, what if you want 45 degrees of toe hang and no offset or onset? You're out of luck. But with this system, you can do that. It also has two different faces. Inserted there is the copper. There's also a brass face. These are nice, thick face inserts, so it's not just like a little cheap, skinny thing that doesn't have good feel. This feels really good. The copper face, very, very soft, very nice and responsive. Um, the brass face, really firm. So if you like a more quick, responsive, firmer feel, the brass is great. They talk in the podcast. They mentioned there's going to be more inserts coming out, so you can have the putter with the specs you want and the feel you want. Because sometimes I know people find a putter they love the feel of, but it doesn't really fit them, or the putter that fits them breaks their heart because it doesn't feel good. So some really cool options here with this putter. Again, I'll have the link to the review in the show notes, and you get to hear the story from Blake and Jeremy themselves here. But if you are looking for more adjustability in your putter, Astral Putters is definitely something you ought to take a look at. So, without any further ado, here is my interview with Blake Callaway and Jeremy Cost of Astral Putters. We are now joined by Blake Callaway, the CEO and founder of Astral Putters, and Jeremy Cost, a partner at Astral Putters on the Plugged In Golf podcast. Guys, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
So I always like to start with this question, and we'll kind of go.
Yes.
Blake, you go first, and then Jeremy jump in here. How did you get started playing golf?
So for me, golf was something that I was always interested as a child. My father was not interested in golf, so it was kind of like this sport from a distance that, I'd go out to the range and hit 500 golf balls and come back and, be begging my parents to take me.
Yeah.
But really didn't find my passion for it until kind of college years and afterwards, kind of when I
Was there
had the
anything?
discretion to take care of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything that? What was it that got you interested? If it wasn't dad, because that's what I hear the most is like dad or grandpa took me out and got me playing. So what was it about golf?
Well, I would say that I'm a gear junkie of all sorts, so that's
Okay,
probably a good segue into other stuff. So the idea of getting to get some cool gear was part of it.
gotcha.
Um, I just it's one of those sports that being good is such a relative term. So I mean, it's like what par is set at is not an average number. It's like
Right.
this extremely illustrious thing, and I think that's a very cool. Like everyone has the ability to constantly improve and be chasing something.
Cool. I like that. And Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, I had played when I was growing up with my father. I grew up in North Dakota actually, so our season was very short, right?
Yeah.
It was winter and then summer and then winter again. Was our season pretty much. So
Yeah.
we had a small muni course about 15 miles away. I think what was cool about that is I think my yearly membership was $40 to get on. So I played a little bit when I was younger, and then but I was really into basketball, baseball, football, so couldn't play golf in high school, and then kind of lost touch with it in college, and then I had started a high school program here back up in Denver. So one of the high schools here didn't have golf, inner city school, and so started that up. And I've always loved to play. So
Very cool. And are you still a hooper? Because do I see like a stack of Jordan boxes there behind you?
those are some Jordans there, but
Yeah.
those are golf shoes.
I
Oh,
was gonna say,
okay.
are they golf Jordans or they
Okay.
basketball? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
All right.
there might be a few Jordans that I was not able to get when I was younger that are sitting in there, but yeah, no, I love the shoes.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Blake, I read on the website that you were doing putters and putter restorations before launching Astral. What you said you were a gear junkie of all kinds, but what got you started in that realm?
So that was really just honestly stress relief. So I was taking old vintage putters that were beat up and just, trashed, and then hand sanding them down to like really pretty pristine things. And so as I started looking for stuff, so I mean, that was first step was playing with some of these old putters with different materials. So carbon steel, brass, those things. I was like, these feel so much better than modern day putters. And then so
Hmm,
I started looking for more specific things. And that really kind of identified the gap of just how few options are on the marketplace,
yeah,
and kind of spawned the idea.
cool. Very cool. And so I guess you kind of answered my question there. It was messing with old putters. Do you feel like there were more options back in the day that we just kind of got phased out over time?
I don't, well, what I identified was is that, you know, as companies release their annual collection of putters, they release the same few putters that they do every year, and they may throw something else in periodically. But
Hmm.
that putter is not going to come back around for 5, 7 years. I mean, the 8802 is a great example of a putter that's, you know, we think of as being ubiquitous, but it'll be like a 5, 10 year stint before someone actually really produces one on the mass market.
Sure.
So I don't know that there was a lot more options back then. I think there was a lot more kind of material options, which I think is something that was of interest to me. But uh,
Okay.
as I started looking for those off year ones, it
Uh-huh.
really kind of identified just how few of them there were.
Interesting. And what kind of pushed you from sitting in your garage sanding putters saying, we don't have that many options to actually starting to move toward launching a putter company?
Well, it was COVID, so
Okay.
I had the ideas in the kind of the back of my head, and I sit around and overthink things. So I was trying to think of like how could I create a putter that had like an adjustable rotating hosel, and so I was just kind of mentally imagining this for a long time, and then I was stuck in my basement with COVID in July of 2022 while my family was off having Fourth of July celebrations, and it was like the first like spirit moment I actually had to start putting paper to pencil or pencil to paper.
Uh-huh.
And then it all took off from there.
Yeah. And so what can you talk us through the steps? I mean, from COVID to launching the putter last year, I mean, there's a pretty big gap between even, an idea, pencil on paper, and then a physical putter. I've got Hazel sitting here easy at my hand, but actually having the thing made. What were the steps? What did you learn along the way?
Um, yes, I mean, it was going back to this, my father not being so into golf. This was a really fun opportunity to kind of reconnect with my father. And so we did a lot of like the idea development, iteration work together.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I kind of came up with the ideas, started drawing them, realized that, my hand drawings were pretty good hand drawings, but that I really needed to learn CAD to be capable of doing something that I could recreate and reproduce. So
Hmm.
went into CAD, then we started 3D printing projects just to kind of see, I have an idea of how this should work. Does it actually work that way? It's actually kind of remarkable of how close the original CAD drawings and CAD models are to what the final product ended up being.
That's cool.
And the next step was, okay, now we actually have to physically start prototyping these parts. And there was a real kind of thing of like, we'd never machined any parts before. And it was like, do I pay someone to do the prototyping, or do I buy a milling machine, teach myself how to mill, and go down that path?
Uh-huh.
And we ended up doing buying the milling machine, and it was a tremendous, I mean, it was a really good idea. It was a very hard, steep learning curve
Hmm.
to kind of take that magnitude of project on. But what it allowed us to do, so, from the idea to the end product, the core idea really didn't change, but it took a ton of work and iterations to get the fit and the connections and all the joints to work as they needed to work. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, I don't even have any idea how many kind of iterations we went through, but having that machine where we could, you know, build it up, model it, write up the program to cut it, and then actually try it, we would have probably never gotten to where we are without that.
Sure, I can imagine that. I mean, I just, I'm not sure anybody can really appreciate this, but the hosel, we'll get more into this in a second. Each hosel has 10 settings per side. I have to think that's, getting that to there to be meaningful performance differences at each of these 10 settings. And that's unbelievable. Did your dad have any background in like CAD or milling or anything like that, or he just came along because he saw your excitement and wanted to be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, he's not an engineer by trade, but always had a very strong kind of engineering type of mind. So it was
Okay.
a lot of kind of back and forth of like, here's an idea, how do we beat up the idea? How do we improve the idea? So kind of a lot of kind of critical analysis.
Yeah.
Um, and then, it was kind of like I only had so much time. So actually the milling machine that I bought, I had sent to his house. We set up a room in his barn to mill, and then I'm writing programs and he's actually running the machine. So it was just kind of a fun
Very
learning curve for both of us.
Yeah, and you say you only had so much time because I assume there was a full-time job going on alongside this.
Yeah, so my background is a business M&A attorney, so
Okay.
lots of time elsewhere. So it's like had a 60, 70 hour a week job on the real job side, and then 30, 40 on this, trying to just go through the ideas. But it was something I absolutely loved, so it was like a very easy way to spend some time.
Well, I think that's super cool for people to hear that, you know, you had the full-time job, you got a family, you didn't have the background, the professional training, but you still got to this point where we've got a real putter in hand that does all these cool things we're going to talk about in a second here. A lot of people we talk to are, they do R&D at Titleist or whatever, and they have engineering degrees, and it can feel like, well, I don't have those degrees, I don't have the proper training, maybe this isn't for me. But I think that's super cool that you just kind of said, no, we'll figure this out if you really want to put the time into it. Um, so let's go ahead and get into the putter. Um, what does it do? How is it different? Talk about all the hosels. Feel free to go as long as you want here and give us all the details on what you've built.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think first things first is that this is a product I designed to kind of address all of my personal grievances with the marketplace.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like everything in the putter is responsive to something specific that I wish was different. And so, I mean, that started off with obviously our hosel. So, kind of the key element of our putter that distinguishes it is that we have three different hosels that all kind of have different offset characteristics to them. They all rotate to 20 different settings. And so what that allows us to do is to make very kind of precise and incremental changes to toe hang and shaft offset. We can talk a little bit more about the details. I say one of your how do I get started in this? One of the foundations is actually plugged in golf, kind of like all of your detail, the myth busting. I loved reading all of that content. So,
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of kind of information out there that probably spawned my interest to want to try to build this product. Um, but so what we've found, what we're trying to address is that both shaft offset and toe hang independently can address a lot of, or can give you tools to adjust a putter to match a golfer swing. They can work together or they can work independently. And so kind of having the ability to change both of those or just one of those, or for the most part, um, we can kind of find what's moving the needle most with the
Hmm.
golfer, what suits their eye, what is actually changing it, and then kind of adapt the fit to meet their needs. So that was kind of the first step. The second element was lie angle adjustments. A putter can only bend so many different times, and I think a lot of people don't really appreciate just how significant lie angle affects their putting.
Sure.
And what we find more often than not, the biggest difference is how often you hit the ball out of the center of the face.
Hmm.
What a lot of people do is that they will get a putter that is, like a 70-degree lie angle, and they'll lay it on the ground so that it looks right.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll either have a steeper or shallower type swing stroke, and they heel it or toe it
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. And just that psychological shift of changing lie angle makes a really big difference in terms of performance. And I think that that's one of our big elements is that, yeah, I think we do have a very forgiving putter, but the real performance games come from hitting your putter out of the center of the face more often than not. And I don't think that the industry talks about that enough.
Sure. Sure.
Um, Then the other kind of elements of our putter is that we did try to create a modular platform so that, again, with those lie angle adjustments, we don't have to bend it. We can just drop in different pieces to let people try different lie angles. Um, Likewise, if they can buy a separate part and insert it.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 putter head styles out right now. We have a kind of a mid mallet or a double wide type putter, as well as a conventional blade. We have a mallet prototype that we'll be having out launching at the PGA show. That's, I think, going to be a pretty big winner for us, as well as different face insert materials. So right now we offer brass, which is, I think, a crisper, harder material, a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
feedback. The copper is quite a bit softer, but still feels really nice and responsive despite being soft. And we'll be offering, again, some other materials out there. I think steel's coming next, and then we're going to kind of start toying with doing some wood and plastic faces
Hmm.
that have kind of brass back inserts. So we have the weight, we have the performance, but again, kind of a uh, different feel to them, uh, that makes them kind of compatible with people's swing. So
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, there's a lot there. There's a lot of stuff going on with this putter. I feel like you could have stopped well short of everything you did and still said, "Hey, this is pretty unique." But you kind of went all out, which I love to see that. The putter face piece is something I think, even if you're sitting there thinking, well, my putter fits me okay, I like it fine. I think the different feel thing is something I would guess, and maybe you can tell me what you found from your customers. I would think that's something that really resonates with people because I think a lot of people maybe hit a putter and say, "Oh man, I really like the way this feels," but it doesn't perform for me, or I've got this one that performs, but I wish it felt like this. Um, is there one kind of adjustment that you feel like really makes people's eyes light up when you fit for them?
well, let's do 2 things. Well, I'll let Jeremy jump in and tell a story about the face inserts because it
Okay.
does resonate. So let him jump in with that one.
Yeah, it was actually maybe last week. We had a fitter fitting in the office, and he came in, really started from ground zero, right, on what he wanted for a putter. Actually, a great golfer, like a 5 handicap, right, but had always had same putter for 10 years, and said this one just works for me. So we started the process. But kind of going to the face inserts, we really started around, kind of the hosel and where he'd be from toe hang, face bounce, things like that. So I felt like we got him pretty dialed in, and then it was kind of like, well, now choose copper or brass, right? And he liked the brass look, and so that's what he wanted to go with. We hit more putts. We hit 20 more putts, and then he was kind of blasting a few by.
Hmm.
With that, we switched to the copper, and he was lights out. He was so excited, just because not only was he dropping putts, but then the ones he was missing, it was just the tap in, no stress tap in. All right, let's
Sure.
move to the next hole type putt. So he actually called me this morning. He was going out today to use it for the second time, and loves it. So it was. I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
I'll give you another story of that one as well. At Jeremy's member guest tournament earlier this year, one of kind of our earlier customers come in. He had really liked the brass face. That was something that's really resonated with him at the time of fitting. At the tournament, Jeremy's golf course is kind of known for fast and fast greens that'll get away from you really quickly. And
Hmm.
so he was just a little bit worried. He's like, do you guys have like a copper face I can just put in here to see and put it in there? Made it to the shootout rounds, was super excited. Whether it made a difference or not, I mean, we hope it sure did. It was a confidence builder for him
Sure.
where he didn't, where
Sure.
he felt like he could go after the putts without being feared that it's going to run off. And I think that that's a really valuable piece.
That's a great point. That feel is a performance thing as much as it's a subjective just enjoyment piece. I know that for me, hitting that brass one, like that's way too firm for me. I like a dying speed, and with that brass, I felt like I had to baby it. Again, maybe not true, but it's up here, so it's as true as anything. I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, Blake. You said that the manufacturers keep putting out like three big buckets of putters, like they're kind of big categories of putters. I don't know if you said three, but what are the big archetypes that you see getting released year after year, and what are the big gaps where you think a player sitting at home might think, well, I like my putter fine. What is he talking about? Maybe you could shine some light on that for them to understand where Astral fits in between those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that kind of the big three that I see out there is you have your Anser style blade, so
Hmm.
plumber's neck, hosel, typically between 45 and 35 degrees of toe hang. Um, we have like a flow neck type setup,
Hmm.
so that's even steeper, so it's like 75 degrees of toe hang. And then we jump all the way to like the face balance mallets, mid mallets, kind of double wide putter, the double bend shaft putters.
Hmm.
So, we've got the measures of change increments. We have like 30 degrees in one category and 45 degrees between the next one.
Hmm.
And what we really, I think, excel at is the in between on all of those.
Hmm.
So the majority of people that come in, you know, either they're really open to just getting fit blind, or they this is what I put with, this is kind of what I want to set it up to. And what we find and what we tell people is that for most people, really the magic like toe hang number is between 30 and 0.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
most people really struggle. It's like they come in and we ask them what their miss tendency is, and I'll say, well, what putter are you playing? And I can tell them what their miss tendency is because the putter's designed to do that. So your
Hmm.
face balanced mallets, most people are going to push miss, and most people that are playing that blade are going to be pulled misses. And when we start collapsing that from 45 to 0, all of a sudden their confidence, the ability to get it online really kind of jumps out.
That's very cool. Now, I was actually talking with a fitter yesterday, and I was telling him about your system here, and his kind of off the cuff remark was, well, are those increments that they've got, you got 60 different settings across the three hosels, are the differences too fine for the average golfer to notice or for it to make a difference? What's your response to that?
And I'll connect it back to the other thing of like kind of what's the aha moment with our customers. So, when we are actually sitting down and fitting somebody, we kind of start, we there's a couple of different starting places we go through, but really the main test when we are in person is 3 feet away, kind of a 2-inch wide shoot. So
Hmm.
we can really start to see where the miss tendency is. And it's funny because oftentimes people's perception of their miss tendencies and what they actually do can be very different.
Sure. Yeah.
But as we start making those incremental changes, the aha moment is all of a sudden, they're missing left, they're missing left, they're missing left. They're putting it straight down the chute, and then they start missing right as we go past it.
Hmm.
And so I do think that they really can appreciate it. And the other thing that I think we're always trying to coach people on when we're fitting them is we want you to stop adapting, compensating for your putter. And so then all of a sudden their kind of misses start, being much more erratic, or I guess much bigger misses. And as we start kind of again narrowing that universe on it, they start finding that they're much more consistent and much easier and much less kind of thinking. And it really is confidence. I mean, that's where we speak to on everything is, you standing over the putter and feeling confident you can shoot that shoot. I mean, that's what matters. That's how you're gonna make putts. Whether
Yeah.
you can or not, sometimes is less important than whether you think you can.
Well, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, right?
Yeah.
Um, Talk me through your fitting process and where can people get fit? Because I think if there are people hearing there are so many settings, maybe that's intimidating. They want a helping hand. Where can people get fit, and what is the fitting process like?
So we have an office here in Denver that we do fit people regularly. Anyone that's local, we try to get to come in. Um, we're setting up kind of a network of fitters. So we have someone in Georgia. I think kind of one of our big pushes at the PGA show is getting our product in the hands of more fitters that, you know, I would say that independent type fitters. So I think that that's kind of something that will be growing over time. But we also do virtual fittings online. And what we typically start with on the virtual fittings, I think that's the way most people are engaged with us, is what are you playing today? What are your results? What are your tendencies? What do you like the looks of? And so then we kind of start narrowing the universe as to kind of diagnosing what their game is
Mm-hmm.
and starting to pair them with specific setting recommendations. So in most cases, we'll have kind of initial fitting, and this is kind of an iterative process as well, where we go through that process and we'll give, you know, probably like I'd suggest you start here and kind of 2 or 3 options on either side, you know, maybe some that are more shaft offset centered, more toe hang centered, so they can get an idea of what's working with them. For a lot of people, that really is all that's needed. You know, with our ability to talk to them and explain to them kind of here are the options and what's going to change when we start doing that, that usually gets them in there. Oftentimes people do want to come back and talk through it again, and we go through that same process, and it's really a let's inform you as to what here are a couple good options. So you don't need to go look at 60, you need to go look at 4 or 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then let's have a conversation and decide whether you need to look at 2 or 3 more. um, and that's the kind of online process. The in-person process is we do have you come in. We start by measuring for lie angle and length of putter. I mean, we defer to what people think that they want. Again, confidence. Don't want to try to put them in something that they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of people when they are getting measured for lie angle blind, um, what we found is a lot of people need something much steeper than what they're using.
Hmm.
So pushing to the 72, 74 is something that a lot of people fit into that I don't think that they ever would have, you know, asked for out of the shop.